Welcome to Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. In this podcast, we delve into the non-clinical aspects of dentistry with inspirational guests from across the profession. You will hear incredible life stories, pick up valuable business tips and be entertained. I'm Andy Acton and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Drevens. What an absolutely incredible, kind and generous man Sam Jethwa is.
Yeah, brilliant. I tell you what, if you want a lesson on laser focus.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? That he obviously, he said himself, you know, he likes structure, but to have that foresight to be laying those kind of stepping stones, 1, 2, 3 stepping stones ahead, but also then following that path.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
To know, I think out of all our guests, I reckon that sort of probably is the youngest person who knows they want to be a dentist.
The age of 11, and not just a dentist.
Yeah.
You know,
that's true. Yes,
specifically
not just a dentist,
an innovative cosmetic dentist. Yeah, no, very, very impressive. And I love the approach in terms of sharing that knowledge as well with the academy, making sure the skills that he's acquired over many years, he's trying to compress that down to give people a leg up.
He's looking at a very collaborative approach.
It is, yeah. And I was also, it was heartening listening to how strong that thread of the BACD is. You know, we spoke to Susie Rowlands a few weeks ago, and she's obviously, you know, the backbone and so passionate about it. But listening to Sam and some of the other names that he mentioned of people that have passed through that academy and what it's meant to them.
I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
And he's quite a busy chap, isn't he?
He's got a lot going on. He's got a lot going on. So we hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you do, please do subscribe, because that would be absolutely lovely. Thank you. How are you doing? You good?
I am very good. Thank you very much. Looking forward to this one.
I am.
Should be fun.
Yeah. This is somebody who I've seen and we've passed at many events, and we've only passed a few words. So I'm really looking forward to understanding more about him and his career. No, of course they were nice words. They're always nice words.
Otherwise, I suppose we wouldn't be on.
Exactly.
If they were rude. No, that would be fun.
So, ladies and gentlemen, today we have Dr Sam Jethwa joining us, and Sam's a principal and founder of Bespoke Smile Cosmetic and Implant Clinic in Marlow, Buckinghamshire. Cool. Founder of the Bespoke Smile Advanced Dentistry and Academy, which will be interesting to find out more about, and also Vice President of the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, and be moving into the role of President in a couple of years' time.
Flair, what a massive business card.
I was going to say, there's a lot going on, Sam. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you so much for having me.
No, not at all.
Our pleasure.
At all. We've got a lot to get through. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking this might have to be a part 1 and part 2. There's
a lot going on.
There's a lot to get to. Sam, just before we kind of get to the dental bit, of which there's lots of facets, what do we need to know about you from your younger years? When you were young as a kid, you know, how did your life get shaped as the young Sam?
Yeah, it's not something you often stop and think about, is it? But I guess every little thing that happened probably shaped some way as to how I am, personality, or what things I do or decisions I make. As a kid, I'm an only child. I don't have siblings, so how that shaped me, I don't know. I guess I do value relationships. I value loyalty. I'm very close to friends who, you know, from school, etc. We're still very close. So maybe there's an aspect of, for friends being family in some ways. But there's also probably, I think, comes from that is a sort of a fierce independence and a lack of willingness or wantingness to rely on anyone or anything. What that really has done for me is say I'm in control of where my future lies, and so wherever I want it to go, that's down to me and not down to anyone else. So I think that's probably been quite a big driver for me in my career. Especially.
Were you sporty at school or anything like that?
No, not at all. That's terrible at sport. The one thing I could do sports-wise was I was not bad at cross country and stuff like that. Like longest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but not sports. There was absolutely not a single sport that I could do and be good at. There was no talent in that aspect.
Did you try them though? Did you give them a go?
Yeah, of course. You know, it was the schools I went to, there's always games afternoon or whatever, and you'd go and you play and you have to do whatever's on. Football, I was terrible at. Rugby, I didn't do at school. Tennis, I wasn't bad at. And then in my secondary school, we had things like horse riding and stuff, which actually was quite interesting. And I wasn't bad at that. But then you need a horse, don't you? And you need someone to
that's true. That's true.
It's a useful thing to have.
It wasn't really one that got any further after that. But no, sports wasn't the thing. But I come from a musical family. So my dad is a singer, didn't make a full-time career out of it, but definitely a part-time career out of it. Albums, Indian music, has a band. I
love that he just did a couple of albums.
Yeah.
How many other people do you know? My dad did no albums whatsoever, Sam, at all.
Taken around the world with that. So that I think was assumed that I would have some kind of natural musical talent. And I think I thought, and we all thought that I did for quite a long time, until we realised actually I probably didn't. But through
was that family being polite? Like some of those people get through to X Factor. Do you know you get people who get an X Factor and they're terrible, and their family have told them they're really good? Was that you?
Told them that they're not very good.
Yeah.
And they're in denial and delusional about it. I think that probably was the case, and the people that knew that I wasn't very good didn't say anything, and my parents just were totally in denial about it because how can you not be good at it?
Was this singing or playing something?
Playing instruments. So I did get to grade 8 saxophone. So I did manage that, but it's not natural to me. I did some piano, grade 5 or 6, and then clarinet, guitar. So I thought I did quite a lot, but it wasn't really natural to me. I worked hard at it and practiced a lot. So that there wasn't that either. So, if you take those two things out, it's like, what's actually left?
Did you get good grades?
There was a struggle. I used to have extra tuition on that as well. So there wasn't, even that wasn't really going for me. But
when we get on to your successes, this is going to make it even more remarkable.
But the girls loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing at school, talking about academics, I was never really very academic either, but wasn't bad. I'm talking about comparing yourself to kids in a school where everybody's quite good, right?
Yeah.
So I was privately educated because I was the only one and they could afford to do that. For me, if there were two of us, that wouldn't have been possible. So I'm lucky in that aspect. So that I think helped me, but I was surrounded by people that were very clever. And so getting A stars was quite normal. So if you get the A, you're not really doing very well. So I was kind of there at that. So relatively speaking, yes, I probably was on probably the top few percent in terms of academics, but not in the environment where I was. And my natural academic interest lied in things like history, English, the humanities, never really interested in science whatsoever, hated chemistry, terrible at maths. But what do you need to get into dental school? You need chemistry, biology, and one other. So, I just kind of had to do the things.
So when did you decide to be a dentist?
Age 11.
Age 11?
Yeah.
Which I must admit I find remarkable because when you said that, we had a sort of an exchange before, and you said, and it wasn't just at 11 you wanted to be a dentist. At 11 you wanted to become an innovative cosmetic dentist.
Yeah.
When I was 11, I was playing tennis with my mate Gary. I had no idea what I was riding a bike, enjoying life and being a kid. And you've already worked out that you don't just want to be a dentist. You've actually gone down a particular path from 11. And what's even more incredible is it's happened.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable.
And out of nowhere, really. Why did you choose a dentist?
It's very odd, isn't it, for an 11-year-old to think that's what I want to do?
Yeah. Especially when your dad's singing. Did you have any family that were dentists or?
No, none. My mum works and still does, soon to retire, in medical education. So being around doctors was quite a normal thing for me. And that put me off entirely. It was totally not what I wanted to do. So I knew what I didn't want in that aspect in terms of medicine. And there were dentists around, not related, but there was a neighbour whose grandkids were studying to become a dentist. You might know of Shamik Popat. He's quite well known in industry. Yeah. So when I was 9 years old, he was at King's with his brother, and they were both just qualified, and they moved into their grandma's house, which is a bit of a easier commute to the university than where their parents were living. So that I saw him graduate, and that was sort of an inspiration. I was about 9 at the time, and then my dad had a friend who was a dentist, and I
bet that makes you feel old when you remind him that you were 9.
Yeah, exactly. He graduated. He was doing his VT, and I was 9 years old. And so, yeah. But it's great because now we see each other and we're both in the same industry, and it's brilliant. So I was exposed to things, but it was those TV shows like 10 Years Younger and stuff that I just 11-year-old, I used to love watching those things, and the dental bit for me weirdly was the most fascinating. And so that's where it came from. So that's
I think it was Rahul and Ash, wasn't it? I think Rahul and Ash were one of the early pioneers.
Yeah, maybe. And I remember the guy in Knightsbridge, Surinder.
Surinder, yeah.
That one a lot. I think maybe the Extreme Makeover before that. I missed that one. May have been just before. But yeah, so then I it was kind of dentistry, and then definitely I want to be able to make those dramatic changes for people. Because it just looked incredible and hard to believe that you could do something like that. As I think, because I focused on that since the age of 11, then everything I did in terms of the choices at school or whatever, in terms of moving forward into being 14, 15, 16 and doing extracurricular activities or building your UCAS CV and all that, you start at kind of like the 16-year-old age on all that stuff. Everything was geared towards going into dental school. So the focus was there, and I think that just meant that I didn't really have any other distraction in terms of what do I want to do.
Wow.
Just make a decision, and obviously lots of work experience.
Yeah, but what's incredible there is we've talked before about the pressure that we put teenagers under to make these life decisions. You know, when you're quite often you're 13, 14, 15, and they're asking you to make these subject choices that are going to determine which degree you do, which career you're going to have. So for you to have known the answers to that is quite unusual, because lots of people don't, and they just fall into something.
You don't always get it right.
Not at all.
I could have thought that's what I wanted, and then I quite easily I've got it wrong. So we are picking things far too early, which isn't what other countries do. But yeah, we are. Maybe that's a wider conversation in terms of
absolutely, yeah.
And how many people drop out of careers and don't follow them through because of how early we have to.
And it's expensive and time consuming as well to go through, particularly with dentistry. 5 years at dental school, it's a huge investment, and in many ways, to then find that perhaps it isn't your true choice.
I wonder how many people, because of that, just stick with it when they're really happy. And
which is sad, isn't it? Yeah. To think that
you probably go so far down a path, don't you, that you just there's no point from probably an emotional point of view and probably a cost point of view of saying, actually, I've had enough. Especially if you can sort of get away with it. Does that make sense? If you can put on a brave face and just sort of like earn some decent money. And
I think in my experience, most dentists I talk to, I sense they genuinely enjoy the clinical treatment of patients. I think lots of the other stuff that goes around it, the bureaucracy, CQC, GDC, managing people, all that is hard work. But the genuine, when you have a handpiece and a patient in the chair, it's unusual. I speak to a dentist who still doesn't get a buzz from treating patients.
Shame we treat patients and we don't treat teeth. That's the thing. So then all that we can't cut out. But also when you go into a vocational thing, you also feel like that's your you are a dentist. That's you. That defines you. And then you kind of have to really, really think outside the box and to re-educate yourself in terms of entrepreneurialism or marketing or branding or learning a new skill.
Definitely, yeah.
You are a dentist, that defines you. So then you think there's nothing else I could do. What would I do? Which is why the GDC stuff stresses us out so much, because it's sort of like, well, if I lose me, because that's defining me, what do I have left? Which isn't really the truth, is it? You put your mind to it and you become a dentist, or you could put your mind to something else and become something else. But it's that block that going into vocations does put on you. And now you're having just had a daughter a week ago. Obviously, the discussions around it, what would you encourage your kid to do? Encourage them to do dentistry. I think it actually kind of does. It can make you quite a closed-minded person in terms of your own potential when you go into something vocational, because you think that's all you can do. Which reality isn't the case, because you can do all sorts of things in the industry or outside of it. But sometimes I think it's just that's what you feel that defines you.
You almost internally brainwash yourself, don't you? So that's the only thing you can deliver. Yeah.
I mean, we'll come on to more about your own career, but you obviously, there's a clinical aspect to what you do. There's an educational aspect to what you do. There's working with an association to further the profession. So, like you say, it's quite broad, but you have to have the kind of the attitude and the desire to want to explore beyond the patient in the chair. So your first exposure to the profession followed a family trip to Kenya.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and how did that kind of further spark your interest?
Well, my mum's side of the family are all from Kenya. So my grandma, my mum's mum, was actually born in Kenya. So we're going back, over about 100 years of Indian origin, but in East Africa. Yeah. And so we would go to Kenya every summer. And my auntie, my mum's sister, has just retired, but she had her own school in Nairobi. And so I was at the age of, I think it was 15 or 14, something around that time. Mum said, right, well, the summer you're just going to be spending over there with your auntie, and my other uncle, her brother, there as well. And they're going to take you to work with them, and you're going to learn about whatever they're doing and all sorts of things. And there's, and you can do what you want to do, but it's there for you to learn, right? What life is like in a different country, but also other professions. So then I went, and they used to take me to my uncle. Did really well from absolutely nothing. He built a property portfolio in Nairobi, owned a hotel, had a jukebox business, which was big at the time before Spotify and everything killed it. Also in bars and whatnot. So lots of different things.
Oh, what an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and that was a big inspiration to me, actually, because no one in my family in the UK had ever achieved anything like that. Everybody had a job, and I was like, wow, he's made his own job. I think that's quite incredible, and done so well. And my auntie had her own school, so she wasn't just a teacher, started as a teacher. Husband was a civil engineer, and then he built her a school, which then she became the headmistress of, and then they started with a nursery and built another floor, and then it became all the way.
Wow,
what an incredible couple.
Yeah, so I had these inspirational people around me who didn't themselves believe to be any kind of an inspiration, but they're just going about their lives.
Yeah, doing their own thing.
Yeah, shaped me quite a bit, actually. And my auntie said to me, well, you're interested in dentistry. There's a dentist in our local area. Why don't you just go and spend a week there? I know her, and I'll arrange it. So I spent a week at this community clinic in Nairobi, in a really deprived part of town. And it was quite eye-opening. And then I did a similar thing in the UK, of course, when you're old enough to do work experience, and the difference was huge. Yeah. But it solidified it again for me that, yes, this is what I want to do, even after having seen the two different ends, the private end in a Western country versus somewhere like a community clinic in Africa. It was like, right, the difference it's making to people, relatively speaking. Is still big enough that I want to be able to do that for people. That's what
I was thinking is you probably were changing people's lives very differently. But you're still making an impact, aren't you? You're still changing and helping and whatever. It's fascinating. I remember that thing with that guy. Who's that guy? Very loud. Ian, about, was it Tanzania or something? And when you look at how many patients or potential patients there are per dentist, and then it must be similar to sort of Nairobi in a way. There's so many people and so few dentists that the level of dentistry you do is really just recovery, almost like getting people out of issues. I think it's brilliant, a great juxtaposition, really, of showing two different ways, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a want in the UK, where, I mean, my dad's friend was an NHS dentist, but did some composite work at the time when it was quite kind of new and all that sort of thing, quite innovative. And then you have it was a want kind of treatment, and then you have in Africa, where I was observing that, it's a total need thing. But ultimately, as you say, the difference that it makes to people, whatever the relative difference they want it to make, was still there. So that was it. That was all focused on dentistry.
Yeah. And then roll forward a few years, you then went to King's, where you qualified as a dentist. What did your King's experience teach you, other than how to be a dentist?
I think King's was fantastic. I was so upset on my graduation day, and I'm sure maybe some of my peers in the year will remember, if they ever listen to this, just how emotional few of us were, and I was one of them. Like, I don't want this to end. It's been the best 5 years ever, and it really had. And if I think back to it, I don't remember the exams or the negative stuff about, you know, constantly studying, not having as much free time as everybody else who's doing different other courses. I don't remember any of that. I just remember the really good times. I think your brain blocks those things out after a while. And it was a fantastic experience, because being a student in central London and being able to live there, which is, you know, afford to live there, right? That's just not a thing you can generally afford to do. And so as a young person, so I managed to kind of live in, you know, just off Tower Bridge Road, really amazing location by the river, for full 5 years, and made incredible friends, incredible relationships, people I'm still, you know, friends with now, who work in our clinics as well. We've got a few people from my own cohort, my own year, who work together. Wow. So it was fantastic. And one of the reasons I actually chose King's was because my parents, I grew up in northwest London. And I thought, oh yeah, first year I'll go into halls, and then the second, third, fourth bit I'll just move back home. Obviously that didn't happen, because that was the last thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
What I did manage to do was explore my own city so much better. So now I live now in sort of quite close to central London, and I don't need my sat nav. For me, that's a big thing, because I could just drive in and I know where I'm going. And
you know where you are. Yeah.
I spent 5 years in and around the city.
So if the dentistry goes wrong and you can't do that anymore, you could do open bus tours, couldn't you? You could be like a tour guide of London.
Or the knowledge.
It's funny. The King's thing about being in London was amazing. Yeah. I absolutely loved that, because now I just know my own city really, really well.
Special.
Aside from, of course, it being a brilliant place to learn dentistry. That was fun for me.
So you then have this metropolis of 12 million people living by Tower Bridge, going to King's, the biggest, best city in the world. So you then decide to go and do your, what was VT then, now your foundation year, to rural Cornwall. So that must have been quite a stark contrast.
Take us through the thought process on that one.
Well, you say decided. I didn't decide it. It was decided for me.
So that's where you got placed.
I'd say, excellent.
It was 2012, and that was the first year where there was a new system for VTs.
Right.
So the foundation training has it was about, I think you could apply to where you wanted to go, and then it was that kind of system.
Yeah.
But there was apparently there was favoritism, and so-and-so's uncle's a dentist in northwest London, and they're going to get that job, and it was all becoming a bit of a
political.
And so the people who didn't, sadly, and a lot of people in dentistry, especially the London universities, they do have family, maybe parents, uncles, aunties that are, this is the demographic, isn't it, that are in the profession already. So they were getting all the best training jobs, and then other people left not having them. So they thought they'd fix this, and they changed it so that you had an interview. And I vaguely remember it. You had an interview, you go in, and it was kind of like a chat, but then there was also some other academic questions and things like that. And there was some kind of an exam, and there was a few things to do. And they also ask you to rank all the foundation training regions. I think it was 1 to 75 or something, really, really long.
Oh my goodness.
According to where you want to go. So I put 1 to 10, all the London boroughs, essentially, thinking, oh yeah, obviously I'll get London, of course. And then being so London-centric my whole life, of course, anything outside the M25 is like, anxiety-inducing.
It's a foreign country.
Yeah. So
get your passport out.
So then I thought, right, well, if I am ending up outside the M25, where would I want to go? Which I'm never going to, because obviously I'll get one of the top 10.
Of course.
So then I put Cornwall, because I thought, that's a nice place. It's really nice. And then I put things like Birmingham and Midlands and Hull and all those places really low down, because they used to, at that time, stress me out. I think I can't be there. I'd rather be somewhere I've been on holiday before, because that might be quite nice. But I'm never going to need it anyway. Yeah. And then the rankings came out, and I was ranked in the bit that was Truro, and it said Truro, and I just couldn't believe it. So it's got to be
it's probably about probably the 8 people that put Cornwall, not bottom.
Excuse me, sir. There's been a mistake.
Yeah, I thought there's got to be some kind of a mistake, you know. So,
you could just imagine someone sitting there going, "Bloody hell, he's put Cornwall 11th, right? That's a first choice as far as we're concerned."
Yeah, so that's what happened. And then I called my mum and I said, "What am I going to do?" And then she said, "It's fine, you know, we'll go and be fine and we'll help you settle down and all this, but it's so far away." And then I think what happened was the game changer, really, because I ended up there and you had a meet and greet with your potential practice owner, the VT trainer. And my VT trainer wasn't there. Well, the one I ended up with wasn't there. So everybody else thought, "Oh, well, he's not there. He must not be a very good trainer because he's not very interested in meeting us." So nobody put that practice down at all. And then, of course, I didn't really want to be there anyway. So I thought, I don't really want to be with someone that's too keen because I don't really want to be
the reverse psychology.
Reverse psychology going on. That's a bit like the discussion with your wife, isn't it? When they're doing the double bluff and you're thinking, "Well, hang on, what should I answer this?"
So that's how it went down. And I put that practice, my top practice, and of course no one else did. And I was also basing it on location because it was in the centre of Truro. And I know there's a train station and that goes to London. So I already had done that trip to get there. So I knew that, okay, the location is quite good. He's obviously not that like overly keen. He's not going to sit over my shoulder and kind of like, you know, sort of stuff because I kind of just want to be here and get the year out of the way. Turned out that it was a match made in heaven, and Mark, who was my VT trainer, and I are still friends now, and we'll be going back for 11 years. And he taught me so much in that 1 year. And the first thing he said to me was, on the first day, because I didn't make it to the thing, I was away. Really sorry about that, but nice to meet you. And I understand that you don't really want to be here.
Pleased to meet you.
I said, "Yeah, I don't." He goes, "Well, what can I do to make it better for you?" Which is really, really nice. And so I thought, oh, wow, okay, I didn't expect that. So I said, the one thing that I would appreciate is if I would manage to, on a Friday, finish early enough that I could actually head back into London if I needed to for the weekend. And he's like, absolutely fine. If that's what's going to make you happy, because I think he appreciated it. If he's got a happy VT, it's going to get, patients are going to be happier. It's going to have less hassle with me and whatnot.
What a great lesson for you to learn early on.
So he said, "That's fine. We'll just close the practice at 2 p.m. on Friday. In fact, you know, not just your diary. Let's just close the whole practice at 2 p.m. on Friday." And so we did that. And I managed to get back all weekends except for 8, of which 3 of them people visited me.
Wow.
All those. And 3 of them were exams. I was VT, JDF and all those things. And then the other ones were when people visited. So I just was back and forth every weekend. And it was an amazing experience. The VTs that I met were great. A friend of mine, another VT who didn't want to be there either, moved in with me and we had a flat share together and it was really great.
How long's the train journey?
Sorry?
How long's the train journey?
Really long, too long. I used to fly, actually. I used to block book my flights from Newquay. And I think I did train a couple of times. It's about 4 to 5 hours. So.
In retrospect, during your training down in Cornwall, was it a slower pace? Did you have more time? Was there better capacity? London, we know London moves at 100 miles an hour. So as a newly qualified dentist, did it actually turn out to be a really good place to do your VT?
It was the best place that I everything happens, doesn't it? And for a reason, you make the most of it or you don't. And I decided to make the most of it once Mark and I realized that actually we have so much in common and it's going to be a supportive trainer to me. And it was the best year ever. Clinically, I learned everything I needed to learn. I learned how to work with the nurses. The nursing support I had was amazing. They were so nice, so welcoming. Taught me lots of things. Like even something I remember now is just at the end of the day, say thank you to the nurse, not just okay, bye, see you tomorrow. Say thanks for today, etc. You know, just small things
means a lot.
That they taught me was really, really helpful, and it has stood me in good stead. So I don't now see it as a negative. I see it as one of the best things that ever happened. So yes, I totally agree. And having spoken to people who went to the places I really wanted to go, they had a very different experience. I think it was a blessing.
Brilliant. Just before we get to your practice and your academy, you're quite well known on social media, on Instagram. You post quite a lot, but for me, your page, you post in a very positive way. The things you put up, it's a very positive environment. Is there a strategy behind this, and has it been good for business? Because you were quite an early adopter of Instagram, weren't you? You were kind of one of the leading lights in the early days.
Yeah, social media is a very interesting area, of course. I mean, we could be here for hours talking about all the nuances of social media and all this stuff, especially within dentistry. I was actually late to Instagram as a platform, personally, because I'm very kind of, I like what I like, and I really need a push to get onto new platforms like this. So, for example, when Facebook came out, I was like, no, resisting it. MySpace is what it's all about.
MySpace, oh my word!
My MySpace page was amazing. Because you could create whatever you wanted. It was such a creative thing, and that was always interesting to me, is to be more creative. So you could have your own backgrounds in the music and all this sort of stuff. And then Facebook was blue and white and really kind of like TV. So I'm not interested in that at the time, of course, and then it's changed. So I was late to that. Then it was Instagram, and people said, "Oh, you'd love it," because I used to enjoy my photography and all this sort of thing. It was all about photos and of food and travel, and that's what it was at the start. And so I just can't be bothered with another app. I just don't want it. And then I got it in the end, and then I don't really know I can't remember really how the dentistry aspect started on it. I think I just did one composite case or something that I thought was quite good. And I just put it there. And then it was well received. And I thought, oh, okay, we'll use this for dentistry. I think there was a few of us at the time. Simon and I were at university together. Simon Chard was the same year. Right. We've known each other for a long time. He was starting to do lots of social media stuff at the time as well. And so it was all kind of at the same time. So yes, I guess I was one of the earliest ones in dentistry.
Did you feel, speaking to lots of young dentists, there's quite a lot of apprehension now among young dentists showing their work. They feel some of the cases that are out there are incredible. So as a young dentist, I couldn't possibly put my work up. Back in the day when you started, did you have that same apprehension of showing your work, or was it a different time?
No, it was the same, but it was more on Facebook at the time. So it was. I remember a good friend of mine, Richard Field. If you heard of him, he's a very good friend of mine. But at the time, he was just a dentist that I knew. We weren't really very, very close. But I remember his work was exemplary and like totally incredible to me, and it was all on Facebook. And seeing that pushes the standards up, doesn't it? Because then I am not going to post something until I think it's half good, because I'm going to feel like people are going to compare. And so with Instagram, it's no different. But I think that there wasn't as much dentistry on there, so there wasn't as much comparison. And Facebook was always a place where there was a bit of negativity, and there still is. Yeah. I don't spend any time on it really, and that was a place I didn't really want to go with it. So Instagram was a lot more positive, and I think that was why I felt more comfortable doing so. But ultimately, and I do say this when we'll talk about my academy in a moment, but some of my mentoring dentists who I one-to-one with for like 6 months a year, often one of their challenges is, how do I start putting stuff on social media and building my profile, let's say on Instagram, for example? And the answer is you just have to kind of close your eyes, put it out there. If you think it's half decent, then most other people really think it's half decent too. And most people think it's better than you think it is, because we're always our worst enemy especially in cosmetic dentistry. So, which is a good thing. It's a good way to look at it, because you're always going to want to improve. But that's what, and if I go back and scroll back, my work is, I'm looking at, how on earth was I posting that? Like, it's so embarrassing. How did I ever build any kind of profile, putting stuff out like that? But then times move on and your standards improve. And I think everybody putting good quality work out now is pushing standards up even higher, which is a good thing. But no one should really feel, I don't think, defeated by that, or feel that people are being judged. I've always steered very clear from any groups because there are groups out there on WhatsApp, on Facebook, there's of dentists who will comment, even within their own private groups or whatnot, about other people's work. And I've seen it over somebody's shoulder at a BACD conference about my work. I've seen it firsthand. It's people that I know. And that's really, really what's bringing our profession down. We should be working with each other to kind of improve how we communicate and how we talk about other dentists. And unfortunately, that sort of thing is out there. You just have to just do this and close your eyes and close your ears to it.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. And I think particularly for younger dentists who are on that tipping point where they're nervous about posting their work, hopefully they'll take a lot from that.
If you keep thinking about what other people are going to think, then...
you just don't do anything, do you?
I was going to say, I think you'll paralyse yourself in life generally if you're worried about the opinions of others too heavily.
As long as you know you're doing the right thing and you're proud of what you're doing, you're making a difference to patients' lives and you're doing it in a safe way, then that's something to be applauded. And then, of course, clinically, we can all get better.
Absolutely. So jumping away from that, you then set up your academy in 2018 and your practice in 2019. Yes. What was the journey from, you're now back from Cornwall, you're back in the safe confines of London. What was the process to get from there to setting up an academy? And I found it interesting that you set up your academy before your practice.
Yeah, so I was about to say the academy first and then the practice.
Yeah, quite often it's the other way around.
Well, what happened was I came back to London. I had a group of patients in Cornwall that were amazing and I really enjoyed it. But they asked me not a single question. I think I had one patient who wanted to know what material I was using for something. Right, yeah. It was very much I need a filling. Okay, fine. Need a tooth out. Okay. And I came to London. I was trying to find a job in London. That was really tough. Through dropping my CV to every single practice across northwest London, I managed to find somebody who called me back, and then there wasn't a job available, then there was, and managed to get that, and it was amazing. In northwest London, private and NHS mixed practice, majority NHS, and I had patients who were asking loads of questions, like what material is it going to be? Is it white? And then all the crown. Why can't I have the white crown? Or what kind of dentures? All these sort of things. I had to start explaining all these things. Oh, I will have to take the tooth out. I don't want to take the tooth out. What else can I have? It was totally different to Cornwall. So the first thing that I had to step up was my communication of how to explain all these treatments, and I had to get quicker because I still had a similar amount of time. I did have longer than I had in Cornwall, but only I'm talking about 5 minutes longer. Often these conversations would be 10 or 15 minutes on their own. The first thing that I tried to work on was that. Communicating treatments, but also communicating NHS versus private, because that is such a difficult thing in a mixed practice to get right and stick within the rules and make sure you're always doing the right thing, because it's very difficult for us to always know what is going to fit in with the rules and what isn't. We don't always get it right. So that was what I worked on. But while I was in Cornwall, I knew that what I wanted was cosmetic dentistry. And so I had already enrolled onto various one-year restorative courses before my BT finished. I'd already done some stuff in London back and forth. And I had some shadowing with private dentists who were doing cosmetic work.
That's pretty forward thinking. That's the 11-year-old Sam deciding that he wants to be a dentist. This is the Sam in his early 20s already mapping out your career path.
Yeah, I didn't want to waste any time. And I also wanted to learn, how to do that stuff that I was seeing other people do and thought was amazing. So BACD was really the start of all of that for me, because being around people who were already doing that were the people that I admired in the industry. It was sort of helping me to develop that pathway, because often as young dentists, we just don't know what to do next. We know where we want to be. And nowadays, I have to say, everybody wants to be there overnight, and they forget that it's taken people like me over 10 years. Even though the grey hairs are coming in now, but people would still consider me to be on the younger side, which is fair enough. But I graduated at 23. I'm 34 now, and I haven't wasted any time. So it's been constant sort of growth. So it doesn't happen overnight. And
it's so true, isn't it? It's that 10,000 hours thing.
Yeah, 10,000 hours.
Takes time to mastery. Mastery is not easy.
But it looks easy.
Even then, you still want to get better and better, because things change and your standards change. So that is where I ended up, and I just continued on the courses, ticking the boxes, right? Photography, composites, a year-long restorative, so a bit of everything, kind of weeding out the stuff I knew I didn't like. So root canal treatments, extractions, I'm not going to go in and learn more about those because I don't really like it. But then I spent a lot of time thinking that I was going to become an implant dentist. And I spent tens of thousands of pounds on implant courses in the UK, abroad, for about 3 or 4 years, alongside lots of cosmetic stuff. So what I did is, and often when we're doing our training days and we're talking about the non-clinical, I always show this graph about the level of investment. So, when we graduate as dentists, we actually earn pretty well, considering we're 23 years old usually, if you haven't taken a gap year or if you're doing post-grad, but you're quite young. And you are earning around about 30 to 35k a year, something like that, as a VT, which is really good. And then you go into practice, and that can double or triple really quickly. Even with mixed practice, some NHS, some private work, all NHS, it's a volume game. So you end up earning a lot more than your friends who are not dentists, who you went to university with, who are doing things in the corporate world, whether it's finance or lawyers and things. Those are what things my friends were doing. So I had a lot of surplus income per year, about 30 or 40k, let's say. So what am I going to do with that? So because when we go on a holiday, we obviously have to match the budget. Like a group of lads on a holiday, we match the budget of the person who can afford the lease.
So it's true surplus, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like, what am I going to do that? So I just thought, right, I have to just self-invest. So I put that amount of money every year into different courses and training. And I wouldn't say I've wasted a penny, because even if I went on a course and thought it didn't give me exactly what I thought it would, it gave me something.
Yeah, you learnt something.
Yeah. And so I just invested a lot. And I added it up the other day because we had one of our days where it was a non-clinical day about this sort of thing. And it was eye-watering. I couldn't believe it. You could buy a company's deposit for a London flat if you or more, if you add it up. But it was all worth it. So I didn't waste any time. And through the BACD, I was then offered a position. I wasn't looking for one. In the private practice with Rahul Doshi, who is ex-BACD president as well. And he was really keen to get me in because he was inundated in their practice and they needed somebody to do more of the general work. And that's where I went after London. And it took me about 6 months to make that move because I was so happy where I was in my mixed practice and I felt loyalty.
And also, was that Hertford?
Yeah, or
Hertford, yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of outside the M25. This is getting quite racy again, isn't it?
I was commuting from northwest London to Hertford, and I started on a day a week doing their general stuff, the stuff that they'd refer me, and then it became 2 days a week, then 3 days a week. Before then, it became 5 days a week. And then the practice was going through a transition, so the principals were kind of selling the practice on, and so I had to take up, just because I was there then, the majority of the time, I had to take up a lot of the cosmetic work. So I was just thrown into this situation where I had to find a way of learning.
What's quite nice in this whole story is how strongly the BACD features. You said about you joined as a member, and there was a big influence in terms of direction for learning, and it was Rahul who then offered you a position, and you're still heavily involved becoming president in a couple of years' time. The amount of people that lean back on how important the BACD has been in helping them develop their careers. It's a special organisation, isn't it?
And giving back as well, which is quite nice to see.
If you look at most of us who are doing this sort of work there and have found our way in this industry to the kind of level that we're doing at, BACD will have some kind of academy or some kind of community, whether it's BACD, whether it's others, because others are now around. Will have played a part, because you can't do this on your own. You have to find ways of seeing how others have done it and try and do the same. It's not lecturing in lectures. It's like going out for dinner.
The community,
and then chatting to people like, oh, you've got practice there. How did you do that? What kind of work? Oh, how that's amazing. And the things you pick up in non-educational environment, being around people, that's can't put a price on that. That's amazing.
And was that was part of that the driver for you to set up your own academy, seeing how powerful that was? Was that something you thought, actually, I've got something else that I could provide now? You've got your full postgrad diploma in occlusion and porcelain veneers. Was it looking at the BACD as an example and saying, there's a place for me?
I think not really. I think BACD is BACD, and it is so special that nothing can compare, as far as I'm concerned. What it was problem solving for me, really. Right. It starts actually with social media. As if we go back, when my profile reached a certain point, I was putting out mainly ceramic work because that's what I ended up doing only majority of the time. And that wasn't something that was particularly promoted. In fact, it was discouraged because of preparation and all that sort of thing on the teeth, etc. And so I was kind of one of the few, or the only one, putting out ceramic work on social media at that time. And that was because the practice that I was in was geared towards that. And then I had to learn the occlusion skills, the material skills, all that stuff along the way. And so that's what I was putting out there. So what would happen is dentists who wanted to learn about that sort of thing would contact me and say, Sam, you're doing a lot of this ceramic stuff. I don't know anything about that. There's nowhere really I feel I can go and learn that. Can I come and spend a day with you? And I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely fine. And this happened for a couple of years. I'd have dentists coming in and spending a day, and it'd be nice. It's nothing formal, no structure, just watch. And at this point, I had developed my own techniques of fixing the problems that I didn't like within ceramic work. So heavy preparation, which was how it was done, false looking ceramic, poor material choice or color, and just didn't look the aesthetic that I wanted it to look like. And longevity, because being in a practice that you see the failures, it's 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, even if they're not my own cases, I can then learn from that and say, look, this stuff works, this stuff doesn't work. So there were issues within veneers that I felt needed to be rectified. And so I worked with the labs and spent a day a week at the lab, for example, learning what happens there and fixing all these things. And that's where kind of the full handmade trial smile and the material thicknesses, and we worked on the translucency and all these sorts of things started. And then I would do that in practice while dentists were watching. And then what would happen is, instead of all their questions becoming answered at the end of the day, they just had a much longer list of questions, because you can watch someone do something, but you have no idea. It's like, well, you made that look easy. How? And then this happened enough that I thought, God, actually, I'm leaving these people more confused than when they came in, which is really the opposite of teaching.
Yes, it's not your ideal, is it?
So we had to put something more formal together. So I spent another 2 years then figuring out if I was going somewhere to learn what I know now, how would I structure it? Because I learned a lot as I went along, and trial and error and practicing and working with the labs and working with the patients. So it wasn't really very academic, because I'm not it's very more practical. So I put that together into a 6-day course, and that was 2018 was when I launched the first course, because I felt there was no other way of learning this stuff on 1 day or 2 days or shadowing. It had to be a full 6, actually it was 8 days at the time, on a course. And then it's developed from there. So we had about 5 people on that course, and now we do 2 a year. We have 15 on each, so we have 30. And now that's become, because of the hours and the amount of effort they put in, and we're teaching people more rehabilitations, full mouth, all this sort of thing. It's developed into postgraduate diploma in occlusion and porcelain veneers, which is the only one in the world. And get that qualification anywhere else, which is obviously something that we're very proud of.
And you were saying that looking at lots of other people's work, and you now, specialising in ultra thin veneers, what did you learn from looking at other people's work in terms of their failures and the failures that you've had, that you've been able to build into this diploma, so that people kind of don't make the mistakes that you've been through and you've seen?
And you hit the nail on the head there. I've made those mistakes myself and learned the hard way. So when something fails, I've had to deal with that. So because of that happening again and again and again and again, you tend to not make the same mistakes again. And then you develop that mistake as a common mistake. right, I'm going to stop that from happening, or that failure from happening clinically, because we're going to do this instead. And then once you do that, and you can only do that when you're only doing that one treatment again and again and again and again. You're working 5 days a week, 7 to 8 hours a day, only doing ceramic work and porcelain veneers. You're going to
you learn, don't you?
You're going to develop techniques a million times quicker than somebody who's going to be doing one porcelain case every month, even, which is still quite a lot. So that has fast-tracked me in a way, because I've managed to condense probably about 15 years worth of failure into like an 8-year period.
Right, yeah.
And so that's where I have figured it out. But also seeing cases that, in terms of, as dentistry, we're always focused on the clinical. What works? How do I prep that tooth? What material do I use? How do I bond that on? All those things is what we as young dentists, when we're sort of in our mid-20s learning these cosmetic things, we're really focused on that clinical aspect. And so that's now we've got that nailed. We've got our whole workflow and protocol. We can teach that. But that once we've got people to know that side of things, then it's a case of taking it a step further and saying, how are you managing the expectations of people who are coming in to actually ask you for that kind of work? Do the best job that exists. But actually, is that going to last? How are you going to avoid the long-term failures? And how are you going to manage that patient's emotions and psychology from the beginning to the end? Because often cosmetic dentistry, that is the hardest bit. The clinical stuff, we can teach you because we've been there and done it. But this bit is now the next step.
How many clinical days do you work a week, Sam?
Too many. I was 5 days, and then that went down to 4 days, and then now that's gone back up to 5 days as we've opened our Wimpole Street clinic. So Bespoke Smile is now in Marlow, but also in London. And so I'm kind of spreading myself over everywhere. So you've got 2 practices: a training academy, a sausage dog. And a dad. A wife who's a TV doctor and GP, so she's obviously got a busy life in her own world, and you've just become a new father. So where does downtime fit in?
Yeah, it does now. This podcast's super relaxer,
So and of course BACD on top of that, right? Because that's what people don't always know, and it's not something we publicise at all, because we don't have to. We're doing it out of choice. But being a board member on the BACD and having been one for a number of years now, it is a job in itself, a separate job. We're communicating on the board as a board every single day on the decisions about, let's say, our conference or the education or the marketing. And I've been comms director for a few years before I passed that on, and I'm now VP. But that's a full-time role in between the clinical work, in between the academy, in between getting back to my one-to-one dentist they can contact me anytime, plus all the business side of the practice. It's a lot. But I think that I'm not getting it right. I wouldn't say I'm getting the work-life balance right. I think that I have a very adaptable relationship. So my wife is very understanding. Knows what I want to do and what I want to achieve, and she never sort of stops me from doing that. Maybe different now that we have a baby, so things might change. But the idea is that I do need to keep myself clinical, because that's how I can deliver the best education. If I stop and then I start teaching fully, let's say, then I'll only be able to teach what I know up to today.
So you become out of date.
It's a guy that used to do it, as opposed to a guy who's doing it.
And they'll only get me up to today, what I know. Whereas every day I'm in and every day there's something new, I can bring that back. So there will still need to be a clinical element. It probably won't be 5 days a week once things are settled in London, Marlow and things like that. So that won't
also be. I sense your energy and passion for clinical dentistry as well. You don't strike me as somebody that, whilst you enjoy the business side, I think you still have a real passion for dentistry too.
I do, and I think part of it is because I've created my own dream week in a sense, because we have a really good team. So I'm very fortunate to have people that've been through our academy, So my associates have been through that, but also know from BACD. So there's relationships there with our associates who I pick based upon what kind of work they want to do, where they want their careers to go. And then we know what everybody wants to do, and we try not to have everybody wanting to do the same thing within the practices.
Yeah.
So everyone does what they want to do. They're all enjoying what they're doing, but actually from the patient point of view, you're covering all bases. But as a dentist, you're not being forced to do something you don't want to do. And that's how I can focus purely on the veneer side of things, and I don't do anything else. So that means that I can see a certain number of people in the day. So I'm not in 5 days a week seeing 30 people.
Yeah.
I might see 2 or 3.
But that's a smart way to structure your business as well, because you say you loathe root canals or extractions or whatever it is. There might be somebody else that loves it. So getting people to do the bit they enjoy, it doesn't mean because you don't enjoy it, somebody else will take on a job they don't enjoy. They may love doing that, but it's just not for you. So balancing out what people are doing is a smart way to configure it.
And as a patient, do you want to see a jack of all trades?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know,
but it's interesting. We were talking about that. Yeah, are we moving into a climate where we end up with people who specialise? You know, you're still always going to be qualified as a general dentist, but you'll start to see specialists within a practice environment for different treatments.
I think that's the way that it should go, because that is how the patient's going to get the best possible care. Everyone I'm not a specialist, right, on paper, because I'm a restorative general dentist, but I have special interest in a certain treatment, which means I'm better at delivering that treatment with fewer complications and longer predictability for the patient. So that's good for them. Whereas if I was doing a few extractions half an hour, I'll probably leave some roots in, break their tuberosity, right? Because I'm just not good at it. So why would they want to see me for that? And my patients know that. They understand that. They kind of seek me out for that. And I think that's really, really good for dentistry going forward. If people do things they want to do, not only does that mean you'll be a happier dentist, and we'll have fewer kind of negativity and issues in terms of I hate my job and all this sort of stuff that we see, which is really, really sad within dentistry. We have so much potential in the industry and in the profession that actually it's a shame that people are there and not enjoying it, because there are things I'm sure that they do enjoy about it, but if they could do more of that, they'd feel better. And so that's one thing in terms of mental health, that we can choose what we want to do. That will be huge for the profession. But then the patient will get the best care too. So that will be good. It's just only really possible in a private environment.
Yes. Yeah. And also with good patient communication. So it's explained to the patient why this is good for them, whilst you will see a number of clinicians. You are going to get a better long-term outcome as opposed to being one person.
It's changing the way the patients think as well, because often they think, oh no, but I really like you, I want you to do everything. And that's just how it's always been as a general dentist GDP in a mixed practice, let's say, or an NHS practice. But actually if we can move more into this specialty or special interest model, then everyone's going to benefed, I think. It's the patient.
Absolutely. Sam, it's been a wonderful conversation. Yeah, I think it's great. I think the way that it's weaved together, and who'd have thought how instrumental going to Cornwall would have been for you.
The start of a journey.
Yeah, we always finish up with our guests in the same way. So we have 2 questions for you, and the first question is: if you could be the fly on a wall in a situation, when would that be? Where would you be, and who would be there?
That's a tough one, isn't it?
Doesn't have to be deep.
No. Do you know what? I've always been fascinated by, and I like my marketing, I like my videography, I like all that stuff. As a kid, I would watch adverts, and some adverts are really weird, aren't they? Just really out there. And think about the Jaffa Cakes advert, full moon, half moon, right? Yeah. I've always wanted to be in the room when an idea like that is pitched.
Okay.
Just to see where did that come from? It's crazy.
That'd be quite interesting.
Yeah.
The Go Compare guy, who's like, the Pavarotti guy, is like, that idea is so stupid that if you're sitting in a meeting and you're explaining that to say, this is what we want to do, I'd really love to know how these people get those ideas through. And actually, they can be really successful.
Yeah.
just always wondered that. It's not a very deep one. It's not like
no. So that's good. I like that.
Also,
compare the meerkat
because you're right. It's that thing of, do people immediately go, great idea, or is it you're nuts, and then you have to work on them and work them round to the idea? And
wonder where the persuasion comes in, or like what's their pitch like. I mean, you can see how my brain works. So I'm just really interested in that. That is where I'd really love to be a fly on the wall. Not
interesting.
Or like when Einstein discovered this or that.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, you've been using on the Go Compare guy and the Jaffa cakes.
Yeah.
And then our follow up to that is, if you could meet somebody, you could sit down and have a coffee or go for a stroll with somebody. Who would you like to meet, given the opportunity?
Well, I'm going to stay consistent because Payman asked me this on his podcast, and I can't really change my mind because that's the answer to the question. And again, it's not deep, and I'm actually not really that into it, but I do think what's been created is amazing in terms of a brand, and it would actually be Kris Jenner.
Oh,
yeah, unexpected, because
it was.
Because I just want to know how on earth did they create such a brand that is just, I mean, whether you like it or you don't like it, it's successful.
It's phenomenal.
It's successful,
and she manages the whole family. Yeah. She manages the whole family. She's a proper matriarch of that. And imagine, I mean, perhaps in the early days, not so much, but now trying to coordinate those egos. I bet that's a job.
I think just as a business situation there's been a branding, business situation, whatever, all the opportunities. I just think I would love to know the truth behind how
they got there.
Yeah, not the what we get fed, which is again filtered. So, which I'm sure she's.
It's almost a bit of another one. How did they pitch that? That's at a TV show.
Yeah. Well, they were kind of pioneers, weren't they, at the time for that? Yeah.
It's. So that's the one I'd want to ask a few questions to.
Brilliant. Sam, thank you for your time.
Fantastic.
We clearly, from talking to you today, you're not short of things to do. So to make your time available to us is very generous.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Congratulations on the new baby as well. Truly wonderful.
Having you. Really pleasure to be invited.
No, not at all. No, it's been really wonderful. And hope to catch up with you soon.
Cheers, Sam. Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.